Welcome to Project Stand's podcast, A Blueprint. My name is Lae'l Hughes-Watkins, founder of Project Stand, and also we have our co-host on the pod, keondra Freemyn.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, so glad you're here with us, Keondra. But what we are really excited about is that we have an amazing guest. We've been really lucky this season, I think, Keondra, with just having some amazing and phenomenal voices on the pod with us. But today we have Trinice Ìyá Fábùnmí McNally, pronoun she, her. Trinice is a Black, queer, feminist, migrant, and survivor, and nationally recognized transformative leader, student affairs professional, organizer, and creative committed to the liberation of oppressed people. Trinice is passionate about developing strategies, initiatives, and curating spaces for historically marginalized populations to transform and thrive through programmatic advocacy and political education efforts. Trinice was born in London, England, by way of Jamaica. As a grandchild of the Windrush generation, she is an Ifa practitioner in the Yoruba tradition. She serves as an Iyálòdé with her partner Olùwó, Bàbá, Ifálòwó, based in Hyattsville, Maryland. And this isn't even the whole bio, y'all. It's much longer, but we want to make sure we get to some questions for Trinice. But I'm going to pass the mic over to my pod co-host Keondra to kick us off.
So thank you so much, Trinice. We're so happy to have you. I wanted to get started with a question about the Windrush generation. I mean, if you could just share what that means historically and what that means to you to be a part of this lineage.
Yeah, I would love to. It was funny. I just came from a lunch where we were talking about displacement. People were asking me like how I see myself, and what does that mean to like as a person that grew up in America, but I don't feel American. And the person I was talking to was also a U.S. born Black person who was like, and I don't feel American either. So what does that even mean? So yeah, the Windrush generation, or people that refer to themselves as a part of that generation, are either the children, grandchildren, or direct descendant, or even some of them, if they're still alive, of people who came to the United Kingdom post-World War II. More than likely, there are people that are from the Caribbean, from places like Jamaica, Guyana, Trinidad. A better way to explain it could be any country that was colonized by the British prior to World War II, because that's how most Jamaicans, Trinidadians, Guyanese folks, and etc. got to the UK post-World War II to basically restabilize their country for them after they had lost the war. So my family was one of the first families in the 40s, in 1948 to be exact, who came to London to try to get access to opportunities. Basically, we were almost indentured servants. Did a lot of labor and hard work to ensure that like not only the British economy could be stabilized, but that our own families could be stabilized back in the islands or back in the Caribbean. So when I say that I am a product of the Windrush generation, I say that with a lot of like pride and integrity around what it means to have to work in the midst of colonization, in the midst of imperialism, and still be able to go back and to reclaim and have connection to our homeland. Because I don't think a lot of people outside of the UK understand like displacement from a Caribbean or like continental perspective. Some folks just are like, oh, there are Black people in England. And it's like, how do you think we got here? Right? If you're from the Caribbean, or if you're from places like Nigeria that were also colonized by the British, we have a very interesting relationship with Great Britain. So that's what I mean when I say I'm a product of the Windrush generation.
Thank you for that. And I think this is a really good setup for the next question, is thinking through, you talk about the intentionality around your cultural identity and holding on to that as it's passed down through generations. So I wonder if you could talk more about how your heritage, you're coming to your own cultural identity, and how were you supported in this exploration of your identity? Did you experience any challenges with it growing up, or finding or connecting to your roots throughout the years?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting question, because I think I'm still finding it in many ways. Like in many ways, I feel like really connected, and I'm really grateful for people like my grandmother who raised me, Trinice McNally, who's now passed, but she talked a lot about the importance of history and the importance of like, where you come from. Do you know your people's names? She talked to me a lot about she was just like a storyteller. As I'm like thinking of her and like picturing her. My grandmother was like a holder of the archive. Like that was the first archivist I ever met in my entire life. Like my grandmother has newspaper clippings, obituaries. She had items from like on the first ship when she came to the UK from Jamaica. Like that was like her importance and significance. And how do you keep items to like tell stories? How do you remember the foods you ate? Like so I guess my cultural identity was largely shaped by like this Black woman who held on to memory. And whether those are pleasant memories or unfortunate memories, she taught me the importance of like keeping and holding memory. And how that when you hold on to those memories, you get to probably tell different stories or more complete stories over time. So I think that my cultural identity is still being shaped in a lot of ways, but I hold on to the things that like my elders have taught me. I hold on to the things that I've like learned in books and like through community members and really just studying like people, Caribbean people in particular, because I feel really connected to the Caribbean, whether we're talking about the East Indies, the West Indies, or we're talking about people directly from the continent, West Africans in particular. And I think through my faith, which is in the Ifa tradition, the Ifa Oriśa tradition, also growing up Christian, right, and seeing those relationships between like conjure and obia, which is a really Caribbean kind of spiritual based tradition rooted in like root work and magic and medicine in particular. A lot of my family has not always been open to alternative, right, like faith traditions, predominantly Christian, or so they believe, right, over the last century. So it's really interesting to reclaim and like to be connected with a lot of my ancestors who were also herbalists, right, who might be missionaries or prophets, and them not necessarily seeing the connection and like Ifa and Candomblé and Obia and 21 divisions and like the rest of the diasporic tradition. So I think I'm reclaiming and learning, but I hold on to the lessons and like the practices from my grandmother, which were a lot largely connected to the importance of preserving memories, telling stories, utilizing food, to be in relationship with other people. She also really shaped my understanding of community by being a person that was largely everybody's mama. Like my grandmother took care of her brothers and sisters. She was the oldest of 14, 12 that we know of, but the word on the street is 14. And she was responsible for taking care of a lot of her siblings. She had foster children. She took care of me and I'm her grandchild, right? Like I'm not the only grandchild that she like literally took care of in her own home and her own money and her own time. So I think that all of these things have like shaped my cultural identity, how I see myself as a Black feminist, or also as a spiritualist, right? And also just as like a Black woman. Like, what does that mean? I think it comes with a lot of responsibility that's informed by these like spiritual practices, these memories, and these teachings.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think the experience of life is so multifaceted. And so being able to bring in all of these elements and understand and have so many lenses through which to understand ourselves and our family and the things that we care about and value really is just a process over time that can be fortified often by our elders and our ancestors. So I really appreciate your response to that question. And thinking a little bit more about kind of the sense of self in terms of occupying spaces, how do you bring and protect your whole self, a Black queer feminist migrant and survivor, in spaces that weren't designed with you in mind? So what are some of your strategies?
I think, wow, y'all have some really good questions. Number one, y'all ask questions. Because a lot of this, I'm like, wow, how am I doing that? And oftentimes I really appreciate like interviews or like podcasts, because they kind of force us to be reflective in a way that maybe we wouldn't have been, right? Like outside like of a therapy session or divination, if like that's your thing. I think for me, it's number one, making the decision to show up. I try to make more cautious decisions about what spaces I show up to as of late. So like the useful utility of discernment has been very helpful for me now in my 30s as a person that like, oh, it's an event, I'm going, we doing this. Versus now I'm like, do I need to be there? Do I have something to offer? Is there something I need to get? Right? Like what will happen if I don't go? Right? Like, so I'm a lot more intentional because I understand like the value of like time and space, to like the point of your whole question. So I think that's the first thing that's most important, like the decision to go or not to go. Because if you're making the decision to go or to participate in something, then what's going to be required of you is largely dependent on what's happening around you and like what the goal is. And it doesn't matter what that is. Are we talking about an action? Are we talking about a meeting? Are we talking about just holding space spiritually for somebody? Like making the decision to go, like, is very crucial, right? On what even happens when you get there. And I think that I'm a little reluctant to just engage and to jump in and to just want to do things these days. The second thing would be the values of like the position, the place, like whatever that thing is. As a person that like is a Black queer migrant, that is also a survivor of many different forms of sexual assault and sexual violence, I try to like take stock of like, what are the risks of me going here and like, where am I at mentally? I think that I've been able to do some work as of recent over the last couple of years, holding a PTSD diagnosis and a severe depression diagnosis that's seasonal, to understand like where I'm at mentally and to be able to assess the risk. Like if I go into this room with some of these people who I know who may not like me, right? Who I know may say things that they don't intentionally mean, right? Or whatever the thing is, what will happen as a result of that? And I think I've learned that really because of what I've seen around me in organizing spaces with people that are not well, who just continue to go into spaces and to continue to harm other people and harm themselves for the sake of what exactly, right? So it's like, maybe if you asked me this question last year this time, I probably might have a different answer. But like in this moment, I number one, discern, and I number two, assess risk. I'm like, where am I at? And what do I actually really have to contribute to the space? And in terms of like creating spaces, I think my own lived experience and other experiences that I deeply care about kind of lead me to being more curious about what people need. And what might people need to feel not just safe, because I don't really believe in safe spaces. I think that's a myth. I think we say it because it sounds really good, but like no space is safe. And no one can guarantee a space to be safe unless the people there commit to engaging in a particular way. And like, how rare is that going to happen, right? We could try, but I don't know your life experience. I don't know what might traumatize you. I don't know, like, I just don't know. So I think I try to create spaces where people can be brave and where they know that it's a container that like this thing could happen and like there is going to be a response that hopefully can move people in a different way. But I really hate the term safe spaces, and I think we all should stop using it, because there's no way we can guarantee a safe to be space. I mean, a space to be safe, excuse me. Like there's actually no way. And I think the more we say that, we kind of set people up to think that like my feelings may not get hurt. And it's like, yeah, your feelings are more than likely going to get hurt in a situation where people have to be vulnerable and we're all coming from oppressed places. But if I create a space that helps you to be brave, then maybe like something can change and transform as a result of you being in that space, even if harm was done, even if your feelings were hurt. So I think that's the best way I can answer that question in this particular moment. Like discernment, making the decision to understand what the risk could potentially be, and like creating spaces for people to be brave so they can transform and grow.
Yeah, I appreciate the answer too. And I think what you kind of hinted on the safe space part in the earlier part of that comment is that really it is about a commitment, period, to each other, right? To having this compassion, to having this openness to accountability, and have these discussions when they're on these difficult topics and when harm has occurred in a space, and that is a really important lens through which to understand how the idea behind a safe space is really about these other things that we're saying underneath that title, right? Which is accountability, compassion, and bravery, and all of these things. That actually, that's what constitutes the space, and not just like throwing a label on it. You know?
Even you saying accountability feels like difficult for me now in this moment, because I feel like we just keep saying that. And like, I honestly feel, I mean, I don't know who will listen to this podcast, but I know that I'm not the only person that I feel disillusioned with Black feminism. I feel disillusioned with all of this movement. I feel I'm like, do I believe that I will see this in this lifetime? Is it truly possible? Because as a person that has spent a bit of time of their life, like committed to these things, and to see the things turn around in a different way, when I know that like we're supposed to be working from the same place, I'm disillusioned, right? Around what I actually think is possible anymore. And I think it's okay. And I'm going to be brave and say that, right? I don't even know what accountability is, because accountability these days feel like I want to crucify and kill you. Like literally that's what it is. So you know what I'm saying? I have my non-negotiables, like consent is a must, right? And children, for me, everything you do needs to be consensual, and you need to leave children alone. Things I think that there is a possibility for people to transform and grow. And I feel like that's what our movement and our values tell us, right? That's what a Black feminist practice is, that we believe in transformation, and we believe that it's possible even when it's difficult. And I feel really disillusioned with this term of like accountability, because I don't feel like I can hold another human being accountable. I can't hold you accountable. You got to hold yourself accountable, right? That's not a thing that we can do for each other. Like, Keondra, I'm so sorry. And then what, right? Like, truly, if I don't make the change, then that's how I show Keondra that I'm sorry. Not by telling Keondra sorry and then Lae'l gets to witness. Like, truly, what changes?
What did that mean? What did that?
Like, like nothing changed here. Like nothing shifted. Your feelings are still hurt. You still feel this. Like, so it's just like I feel disillusioned. In a political climate, I do. And
actually, I have two things I want to follow. There's so much that you just said. I just want to unpack a little bit and even make a statement, as even in your comment about safe spaces, and that just kind of reoriented me for sure. Even as we talk about the commitment people need to make that's in the space, and then your commentary about what accountability, some people are saying that I literally want to harm you or cause put violence against you. Like even now I feel like we can't, depending on where that space is that we're trying to feel safe in, like even outside forces, we can't guarantee that either, just off of potential for physical violence when you're trying to be in community with people, and we can't guarantee even what's the outside forces to ensure that space is safe. So that just made a lot of things come to the fore for me when you just said that. But also, like with your feelings of disillusionment, as we're about to ask you more questions around activism, was there many moments that led you to that, or had there been some singular moment that occurred that made you feel that start to feel that feeling of disillusionment?
I think more recent, over the last couple of years, like has been like the proponent of this idea, this place that I'm sitting. I think if I had the lens and I had better practices, and when I say better practices, I'm not saying like I was the worst person and now I see the light, but more like, did I understand what it meant to be like in my body? Did I even understand like the relationship that like most of us don't have with our body? Did I have a relationship like with myself and my ancestors and my Orisha? Like all these things, I think like I see the world in a very different way now. And just watching movement, watching people and like moving away from a lot of people over the last 2 years in the height of this pandemic, in the height of like fascism in a political climate. And I've watched the way that people have like literally sabotaged each other. And I've watched the way that people have harmed each other and hurt each other and lied to each other. In the name of Black feminisms, in the name of movement, in the name of getting our people free, when only some of us actually get to benefit. I've seen the way that we have like critiqued and like not been accountable. And I think, but called people and said that other people are not accountable when those people have no effort to be in conversation directly. I've watched us do things and say things in the name of principled struggle, but yet they haven't been principled. And I think that because it has personally happened to me, and very rare is it that the person has called me, emailed me, texted me. I've had the same number since 2003, from when I had a Go phone prepaid, because my grandma said that I can only talk for free after 9. Because we couldn't afford no regular phone bill. Like I've had the same number, right? And I'm by no far movement. I don't see myself as a movement leader. I think all of that is bogus. I think it's not real. I think that I do good work and I care about people. Like that's it. And I think that the more we could all see ourselves like that, the better life would actually be, right? The more humble we could be. I think other people may see me in a different way, but I've watched people literally shift and change and like treat each other like they've never known each other before. I've seen the way that people have come and attacked people like in BLM, like the Alicia Garzas of the world, the Patrice Cullors of the world, like all of these people who like y'all have made deities. These people didn't ask for that. Like they didn't ask for that. So I've just seen how people treat each other and how mean they are and how greedy they are and how jealous they are, how the spirit of jealousy and envy is actually a lot more deadly, right? Than even racism itself. Like I've watched it, and it has forced me to be disillusioned with the people around me who I might have once called comrades, but who I cut my losses with and like feel good about it. Actually, I feel like safest I've actually felt when I was in community with most of these people. Now that I have nothing to do with them. So when I say disillusioned, that's what I mean. Like, how is it that I feel a lot safer, clearer, and I can still do good work in the ways that matter to me, right? And in the ways that I can. Because I think everybody's trying to do too much. We think we got to do everything. No, it's not possible in this lifetime. Like, you're not going to solve world hunger, but you can make sure the people on your block is fed. You might be able to shift some policy to ensure that the grocery store gets built, right? Like, but you're not going to solve world hunger. Like, it's not. So it just, I don't know. I don't even know if this is the point of where we're going in the podcast.
But I'm curious now that you said that, because I would love to just, before we even get into the questions that we prepared, is for you to tell us your work. Explain to us what your work is, because I definitely want to make sure there's space for that so our listeners understand, and we don't want to ask you questions where you're like, I'm not really, like you feel like you would describe yourself differently than other people see you. So I really want to make sure that there's space for you to kind of share what is your work now and how would you describe kind of like where you're at with creating a better part of the world, or your vision for the world, or how is that working for you in these moments?
Yeah, I think that's also a really interesting question. My life feels very transient. I feel like I am on a journey in this moment, in this time, that like nothing feels absolute. And I think that more of us do feel like that we just don't actually have the space because everything's so rigid and confined. But I'm an educator first, and I'm an organizer second, a creative third, and I'm always a spiritualist, right? That's like innate and inherent to who I am. And a lot of my work has been based in creating spaces that do not exist for oppressed people. Like, that's what I love to do. That's one of the things I think I do best. And one of the things I never really thought I was trained to do, but I had to figure it out. And I was always put in positions to where I had to figure it out, whether that was creating the first LGBTQ organization at an HBCU in Florida at a fucking homophobic ass institution, excuse me. Shout out to Bethune-Cookman. I love y'all. Y'all are homophobic. And still are, because you still don't have a lot of the programs that we built when we were there. Or going to work at a national organization to ensure that other HBCU presidents and administrators would like give a shit about their queer students, right? Create policies and places for them to go so they could thrive. I'm a person that develops spaces that do not exist so people can have a braver time and a more holistic experience, whether that's how we want to define it as DEI, we want to define it as social justice, we want to define it as even health and wellness. I'm a person that develops those spaces that literally don't exist. And I think that is like the thing that like has undergirded my entire life, is what does it mean to create something that doesn't exist when there's literally no blueprint for it? I've just had to trust myself a whole lot. And I've realized that I was actually like trusting a lot more than me, because it couldn't all came from me, because I'm not that great, right? Like literally I've pulled on like what I've read and what I've learned about like our ancestors and people that have like created like these bodies of work, like Lucy Dick-Slow, right? Like Mary McLeod Bethune, like the Elaine Locks, like the Zora Neale Hurstins. Like we come from a litany of like badass Black people that have made a way out of no way under much harsher conditions. And I was able to like learn from their work and like develop what I think needed to be done, usually at institutions or organizations, so people that are oppressed and marginalized can have access to the shit they deserve. So that's how I best would describe myself. I create shit that don't exist so people can transform and grow. Yeah.
So you're creating the blueprint. You created your
I'm not sure. I'm like, I don't know. Someone might listen to this 50 years from now and be like, well, where's the blueprint? And like, I don't know. I don't know. I did the best I could. But yeah, a lot of my work is like just creating. And I now have considered myself not less of an organizer, but moving more into creative spaces, utilizing fashion and art as a tool that also mobilizes people for transformation. Because we know that the person was political, right? Like that's what Bell has taught us. And we can think about things like food, which is a part of culture, things like fashion, things like music, which are all different like bodies that are like constantly moving and politicize us every day. Like no matter what you wear is political, where you live is political, what you eat is political, what you listen to, the car you drive, everything. So I like to use culture as also that vehicle because it's never stagnant. You know, if you looked up the word culture, you would find over 300 different definitions because there is no one definition of culture, right? Depending on who you're talking to, they're going to have a different answer for you. So I like to utilize like the constant nature of culture to mobilize and to shift folks as well. So I like to get into fashion and use that also as an avenue. But organizing, I think I'll always be an organizer, even though I try to run away from it. I'm like, I don't want to do this actually anymore. But I think there's a way, right? When you are politicized, that you naturally think and do and organize other people into moving as well. So I think the parts of me will always be an organizer. But these days, you know, I'm a creative. I'm Ìyá to my godchildren. I'm Ìyá to the people that also need an Ìyá, who need a spiritual support. And I'm a person that believes in wholeness. I'm not perfection because it doesn't exist. And that's why I really appreciate the tradition that I'm a part of. Because we don't believe in the concept of perfection, but we believe in wholeness and how you can utilize the lessons and the things that like these Orisha, these deities have been through to like benefit your life, right? So you can learn about consequence without shame. Yeah. So I'm moving more into more and more and more confident spiritual spaces, but I'll always be an organizer and always be creative and an educator.
To Keondra's point, I feel like, again, we need to just let the conversation be organic, and it's okay if we don't go with whatever we pre-prepared, because I just even, again, as I kind of want to roll back a little bit, you know, we do tend to deify people oftentimes that are in spaces, you know, folks who are organizers, and we put them on these pedestals and they can do no wrong or shouldn't be doing any wrong. And at this level of perfectionism, that's just not attainable, and no one should be trying to attain it. But yet we do that. We always do that. Every generation has done that. No generation is more guilty, I think, than the other, because that just always seems to happen. But how, like, as you are in this, in this place of disillusionment and making these comments about us being obsessed with deifying folks, do you feel like you have come to any conclusion for how do we slowly move away from that, or how do we craft a conversation to make people understand that we shouldn't do that? Because that is how movements can fall. That's how they become toxic and corruptive, when we engage in that kind of narrative.
Yeah, I think that's a hell of a question. I see the honor, and I mean the point of honor and reverence. Like in the Yoruba tradition, I would argue in any African-based tradition, and Black people generally, right? Like homage and reverence and respect is a foundational principle, right? It doesn't matter what your religious practice is, even if you have a religious practice, like it is the African way to have respect, like I would argue, whether that includes gender or doesn't, right? Depending on your tribe, depending on that relationship's tribe. And I think that if we actually had more reverence for each other, then potentially we could not feel the need to create hierarchy in like a way that becomes harmful. For example, in our tradition in Ifá, when I greet somebody, depending on who they are or what Orisha it is that they hold, like I don't just bow or curtsy to the physical human embodiment. Like I'm bowing to the Orisha that lives in you, right? Like we believe that we are all manifestations of Olódùmarè. Like he created us. The Orisha created us, but we came from God. You can't do nothing without the creator. You call them different things if you want to, right? But we all came from somewhere. Someone is responsible for this that is way more smart than the human. And I think we all have that foundational understanding. When we greet people, we're not just greeting them to accommodate their human ego. I'm greeting you because I am understanding who you embody and what you are. And like, that is a respect that I give, irregardless of my relationship to you as a human. And I think that that concept has like taught me a lot of humility in this tradition, because I bow. You may not see me get down at the Walmart on my knees, right? But when I see my Olùwó, I see my Iya, I see the people that have initiated me, that are my elders, I do that immediately. Like immediately. Children who are younger than me in age, but older than me in spirit, right? Have the honor, and like they have the respect, and we do that and we teach that, because it's not just about the human ego. It is about who are you and who do you represent, and like who's with you. So I think that even that concept is such a powerful one in our tradition, that you may just see as like, oh, a greeting, but like, you're not just greeting me. When people are greeting me, you're greeting me because, you know, Oshun lives within me, Obatala lives within me, Egbe lives in, like, these deities live in me. I am a representation of them. So it's not even about Trinice. It's about who lives in Trinice, right? Who is Trinice even representing? And I think that we don't do that with each other. We just see each other as merely human, like humans. And I'm like, we're miracles. Like, all of us are literally walking miracles, walking around here. Like, you are a manifestation of something that was never supposed to be here. Like, so I don't think we have that basic understanding and reverence, that concept of honor, right? That concept of respect. And it feels like we can't, because you don't believe it, and not you two, but like, because we don't believe that as a people, we are easily like moved by shit that really doesn't matter. And when people's work is awarded as it should be, we feel away because we don't feel seen enough. So people are like 9 times out of 10, they're fighting demons, as the Christians would say. You're fighting like your childhood, like depression. You're fighting your anxiety. You're fighting your psychological mental health issues. I think a lot of us are like, we just haven't been well, y'all. And I think that I get to say that without shame, as a person that's like living with PTSD and depression, and like is the child of a person that is bipolar and had postpartum depression and probably schizophrenia if they would have had a proper diagnosis. So like, what does it mean to like understand not being mentally well, and for us to see each other in our full humanity and dignity, and not just like in a chant, but like literally when I see you, I can speak to you and like acknowledge and like revere like the parts of you that I see, and even the parts that I don't know. We don't have that fundamental like understanding and concept. And it's largely because like a lot of our practices like have been taken from us. So there's, you know what I'm saying? There are ways that we just don't acknowledge each other and see each other. And I think it gets really harmful when we create these fictive kinships with people who we don't know. You do not know Harriet Tubman. You don't know her. I don't know Queen Annie of the Maroons. I don't know Bayard Rustin. I need to stop. We have to stop talking about people as if we knew them, as if they were our homies, because they're not our homies. Most of them they're all our elders, especially if they're no longer here, right? They're actually our ancestors. So I don't think we have like the concept of respect. And I think that sometimes we get too radical, that we forget like the concept of respect and eldership, right? Like you should have respect for people. And then also like everyone deserves dignity. So I think it's like this like egotistical competition and fight that like, I need to be acknowledged. I need to be seen. How come something's happening for them? Why isn't this happening for me? How come they didn't? It's like this constant tug that relates to people's like psychological issues, right? Like their own needs are not met. They don't feel seen. They don't feel loved. They don't feel cared for. And the only spaces they do feel that in are spaces where they get to dominate and be seen. So if someone else is being seen in a way that they're not, they have a problem with that. Because that, for them, that means that they are not enough, or they are not doing whatever it is. So it's like a lack of value of inherent worth. We just don't have. So we make it everyone else's problem, and we get together, right? And now it's a bunch of us that feel that way. Before you know it, it's a whole organization. Before you know it, it's a whole movement of people who share these same values and same thoughts about individuals or people or collective. And this is all based on your personal trauma.
Woo! So where's the collection plate?
Like you're traumatized. Just say like you are traumatized. We are traumatized, right, around these particular things. And I don't really got nothing to say about that right now. That's what I do now. It's just like, oh, that's real sad. That's going on with her. I don't got nothing to say. No, I'm not interested in supporting. I don't want nothing to do with it. I can do this in this way. Like if we just told more complete stories, and like didn't feel like we owed each other like this litany of information constantly, I think the world would be different. But it's so like everything is a competition, it feels like, with people, and that need and necessity to compete and to be seen is like based on our own like diminishing of worth. Like you don't believe that you are inherently valued whether this person sees you or not. So now you have a problem. Everything is a problem. Except you. I don't know. And me, myself personally, I know that I am also a problem, right? So like I'm able to move back, right? Because like we have to be honest, like wholeness, right? Like wholeness doesn't mean that like I haven't hurt or done harm. But like I think we really need to get clear on like, were your feelings hurt or were you harmed? Your feelings was hurt. That's what it was. And you want everything to be about you. You feel away because someone else is receiving something that you don't have, and you are attributing that to your value and your worth. When in reality, we just have different destinies. You can't take mine from me. I can't take mine from you. How about you focus on yours and I focus on mine? Because if we really believe that all human beings have inherent worth and dignity, then why would I be actually worried about why would I not be happy when you win?
Yeah.
Right. That would be a win for our people. Why would I not be excited and honored that y'all said, hey, Trinice, I want to talk to you on my podcast, not blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm angry. Why? Why would I not be grateful? Because I get to see what y'all do and how your brain works and how like it's like just literally the levels of what I've learned of just being grateful more and just being more curious versus being more judgmental and making everything about me because it's not. It just really changed, like it's changing my life in like real time. Like if I was just more curious a long time ago, I wouldn't have had a lot of problems that I had because I made a lot of assumptions. I made too many assumptions and I was wrong. So what happens when we assume less and just believe that everyone is on their agenda, they're on their own journey, and when Lae'l wins, it doesn't mean that it's because Trinice is not great. This is just when Lae'l is supposed to receive what she's supposed to receive. If Lae'l is living on purpose. And who the fuck am I to tell you that you're not living on purpose? Like, it's like we think we have so much authority based on these fictive kinships, and then we start to compare ourselves to historical figures as if we knew like their experiences. Like it's just wild to me. Like you're not these people. The conditions were much harsher and different, and yet like you still get to receive like humanity and dignity, because hopefully when you die, there'll be a legacy told about you. Exactly. But most of us are so invested in ensuring that like we sabotage people's lives now that like they have no legacy. And I'm just like, if it's not anti-Blackness, I don't know what is.
Do you think, oh gosh, there's so many questions. I don't know about my brain is like my brain, my soul, my spirit. Do you feel like going to the BLM then, just real talk, like thinking about Patrice and how and the other like names leaving me, but thinking about what's happened to those two women and how they've been, to that word, demonized. And again, nobody's perfect. So what, like, do you feel that that's like this cannibalization that's occurred with those two? And like, how do, again, thinking about also like going back to the mental illness, that is a lot of mental illness that's going on. I know we've always, when you think about Black and brown folks and marginalized identity, like we are always in the struggle. It's not like it ain't never not been a struggle going on. So it's all, people are having these conversations about the downfall of democracy and us losing rights. Like we've always been struggling. Some of y'all is like, oh, now this is including us too. So now you want to freak out. But like, so that's always been something we're fighting for. But at the same time, as there's some real issues coming forward where things might get a little more difficult than what it's been like the last couple of years or generations, how do we ensure we have people well enough to get us to the next chapter, to get us to the next crossroad when we're doing that cannibalization with each other? And not giving a chance for people to be on that journey that you're talking about and not pull them down and ruin their moment or their legacy?
I think it starts one with like interrogating like the intention around certain things. It's like I'm pretty sure when people might demonize BLM founders, like number one, I don't know those people personally, right? I'm in proximity. I know people who do know them. And I think that starts with literally like, let's just tell more complete stories. Let's stop talking on stuff that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It could, like, we could start there. Could I have made a lot of assumptions based on some articles that I've read? Maybe they could have did something different with this amount of money, right? Maybe they could have made this decision. But do I know? What? I don't know. Right. So I think we need to, if we're going to say we have comrades, and we should trust that the right people are going to make the right decisions. And if not, we need to replace those people to make different decisions. But we need to, number one, stop talking about things that we don't know.
Yeah.
Stop giving full accounts and testaments to something that you do not have that information. You're making assessments.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think that a lot of people are demonizing particular Black women. And gender expensive people as well. But I think there's a way that Black women have been demonized for literally having success. And I'm not saying that that is what happened with these three women in particular, because I've heard all kinds of things about them. But I'm pretty sure if somebody asks you something about me, you hear all kinds of things about me too. If I ask the right people, I will hear some things about you. Right. If I ask the right people, I hear some things about you, Tiandra. You know what I'm saying? Like, so let's just be more honest and tell more complete stories about like, why do people say the things that they say? Right. And like, perhaps they should have made different decisions. And I think there's a lot more to each story, especially when we're talking about money. I think we're in this age where everybody's like hypercritical of capitalism. And I'm like, oh, all of you just have decided to read Karl Marx. That's wonderful for you. I'm so glad that you have now opened the gates to socialism and communism. And you're calling yourself a socialist and you're calling yourself a communist. And baby, do you even believe that?
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to take some time to really study, right, and really understand, right? I don't call myself a socialist or a communist because I have not studied well enough to completely identify with these political ideologies. From what I understand about socialism, it don't sound that bad. Do I understand the point of the ideology and ensuring that everyone has access to what they need and deserve? Yes, right? But like I sometimes think that we're in the age of buzzwords, intersectional. Everything is, you don't even know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't like, so we're using words and we're critiquing everything except ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like now we're so hyper, everything it's so hyper visible, and we just want to interrogate and attack everything but like ourselves. And I think that's like the main thing. Let's stop talking about things that we don't have the complete facts on. Right. Let's actually ask more questions and be more curious. Let's stop utilizing every buzzword that we get our hands on in this week's political education, right? And like using against everyone because everyone is not as well read as you, or everyone doesn't know this theory or this ideology as best as you. It's like everything is a competition, it feels like, in movement. And it's literally become a mean girls club. Like, you can't sit with us because you don't have this. And it's like, well, baby, I don't want to, because who are y'all? Who are you exactly? It's like, what are we really fighting for? So it's become less about getting folks free and more about notoriety and celebrity. And the people who do get acclaimed or do get awards, and they're also, right, they're also going to be shunned upon because it didn't happen for this group or that group. So this person doesn't deserve to get what they've gotten. So it's just a cesspool. It's become a cesspool of jealousy and envy and a mean girls club. Like, we've literally made it all the things we demonize, all the things that we have accused, like white women and white supremacists and the respectability and the elitism and all the other things we say, literally we have emulated and become that same thing in our own movement. We have become blockers and gatekeepers and holders and liars and thieves, right? And you know what I'm saying? And everything else that we have critiqued and criticized. So I don't actually, that's why I say I'm disillusioned. I don't know how to answer this question, because I used to believe that transformation was possible. And I think I still believe that transformation is possible, but I don't know if I will see it or my children will see it in this lifetime, in this world. I don't know that to be true anymore. And I say that with much regret and heartbreak, but not shame. I don't have any shame about saying that. And I think that if certain people hear this podcast, they will feel that way. And I think that that is great for you. And I hope that you're able to achieve the thing that you see. But from what I've seen in the way that we treat each other, in particular, like those of us that are visible, right, or have this perceived success, people aren't really nice. People don't have the basic humanity and compassion because everyone's literally clinging for power or perceived power. So we throw a whole lot of people away and we hurt a whole lot of people along the way, not realizing that those are some of the same people that you will need and that are a part of your community. So I don't know. I don't really know what else to say.
I think that's a great period.
I know. Like, for real.
So I don't know.
We did not come to talk about none of this. How we got here?
To me, this is one of the best. Like, this is one of the best combos in a minute. I just thank you. I at least for me, from a standpoint, I feel like at least until now, as I'm listening to you, I've always seen transformation as, I guess I've seen as this thing that we've got to get to, and it is this period, okay, we got there, and to your point, I may not never see it in the way I'm imagining it in my lifetime, but perhaps see increments of us trying to get there in my lifetime. But that period mark, to your point earlier, I'm not going to see the end of hunger in my, like, that's not going to happen. But it's always going to be this trajectory where we're just going to continue on to hope that we can get there. But it may never occur. It may never occur.
Because it never existed, right? Like, I just am like, some of the things that we want have never existed. And I largely hope has been helpful. And also I'm like, am I a pessimist? I don't know, right? Like, I don't find myself completely optimal about the conditions. Mm-hmm. Literally, my grandma had been telling me about the rapture since I could understand what she was saying. And I know that I know the rapture came several times so far since I've been alive. I'm like, COVID, that was the rapture. It had to be. We still left behind. Like, I've lived through several raptures, which is why I just appreciate the tradition I decided to be a part of. Because, like, this concept of hell, like, this is hell. This is it, right? Like, we believe that the earth is a marketplace. You come here to have different experiences, right? What's the concept of the marketplace? An experience. You trade, you learn, you buy their goods, right? Like, you lose, right? Like, that's life, right? Like, sometimes you got to come back to get it until you could get it right, whatever that means. Because I don't know a whole lot of people that died and have been able to account what the last two lives were like. So it's like, I think that it's this concept of life. And, like, I'm really appreciative around, like, your understanding of transformation, because it's gradual and it takes time. And we may not ever see that end result that we have been so hopeful about or theorized about or that we believe, but it keeps us alive. And I think if our beliefs can bring wholeness and bring healing and bring, like, transformation, like, then, like, let's hold on to those beliefs. Some of the beliefs that we hold on to, like, don't really serve anyone. They really don't even serve us. We just hold on to them because we just can't break up with them. Kind of like patriarchy. Just really difficult to break up with patriarchy. It's like the ex that never leaves. Like, it's always around. We do it. Patriarchy's hanging out in our home. It's hanging out in all of our relationships, whether we're queer, whether we're straight, however we see ourselves. It's like a deeply oppressing system. I think that's, like, some of our, like, ideas and understandings about people. Mm-hmm. Just like envy. What does envy do? When your whole life is focused on critiquing everyone else, when your whole life is, like, based on, like, sabotage and trying to outdo other people instead of just, like, organizing the thing that you're organizing because you know it needs to be done. And it doesn't matter if 10 people show up or if 1,000 people show up. You did it because you know it matters and it needs to happen. What would be different about our movement if that was the goal? But that's never really the goal, is it? The goal is who can do it better. Because for them, better is, like, the measure is not about success, how many people's lives potentially could be changed, how many conversations happen. It's the numbers, the hashtags, the likes. So it's like we have this relationship with instant gratification. Like, we need it. Our lives depend on it. And we're not gonna get free, like, as a result of it. But, like, hopefully we get to a place where, like, that shit really don't matter. And it's difficult because, like, we all make a post, right? And you want someone to like it, maybe. but like I think it's about our relationship. We have to change our relationships with like these modalities of destruction. That's
modalities of destruction. A word.
Oh yeah, yeah. Wow. So I don't know about you, Leo, but I think this might be a good time to check out the Blueprint 5.
That's the rapid fire. Woo! You took us on a journey. Thank you. So our rapid fire 5, the first question we have, what are you doing? Especially after listening to you today. What are you doing for self-care right now?
Self-care, wow. I'm trying to learn how to build in rest in my everyday life. As a person that works in higher education, we don't have sabbaticals. Like sabbaticals is not a concept. It's like, oh, you need a break? You must be finna quit, obviously, because you got a plan, right? Like there's no, so I'm like, what would my life look like if I could just build in rest all the time? Things that I need all the time, what I really need this sabbatical. So yeah, I take more naps. I be napping like hell. Like I'm gonna take a nap. Y'all say I have an hour lunch. That's what these people say. I'm gonna nap for 30 minutes of it. I'm locking my office door. I do have a day bed. Please don't write. Please don't call. I won't answer. Phone on do not disturb. Right? Like I really take a nap. And I think that's my working life. Firstly, I've changed my order of my mornings. Before I even kiss my partner or touch the dog, I pray to my Ori. I pray to my head. I pray to God. I'd say, whoa, I'm still here. Another day? Damn, you got plans for me. Thank you for waking me up this morning. That's the first thing I do. I pray to myself. I ask my Ori, my highest self, to like guide me into the best version of today. Help me to be prepared for whatever may come. I pray. That's the first thing I do. I don't talk to nobody. I don't touch nothing. And then I say good morning to my partner. And I'm trying to set up happier and healthier routines that look like me greeting my shrines in the morning, right? Like maybe we go for a walk with the dog, right? Instead of me getting straight on my laptop to check all 8 email accounts and then check Facebook and then check Instagram. Like I'm like breaking up with those things and trying to slow my life down and have less interaction with outside human life. And I like to pick the humanity that I have to interact with. I think it's been the best decision. I actually talk to much less people and I love it here. It's been so healthy because now when I have to interact with more people, I actually am present. I can be interested because I'm not always so stretched.
Yeah. All right. So our second question is, what is a piece of advice you'd want everyone to know?
Just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. Just because it comes, it doesn't mean it's true. Be more curious.
That's killing it with these answers. What song is your jam at the moment? What's on your playlist?
I'm really an old lady. So I'm like I was listening to Shaka Khan this morning. But I really love Thames. I think her voice has like just range, like anything Thames. TEMS, anything Thames. I'm in love with her music. Yeah, I'm in love with her music. I'm not like listening to any new particular artist. I usually listen to artists like after they get like I'm not up with music like that all the time. But I really appreciate Thames and I really appreciate like old school classics and reggae. But Thames, watch out. Like Thames and Alta Star, that whole Afrobeats nation that's continuing to emerge, like I think they're about to dominate the music scene because they already are.
We're gonna have to put this playlist up on the.
I know. We keep saying we're gonna do it. We should definitely do it.
I do it.
Okay, so what is bringing you joy this month?
What's bringing me joy? My puppy Ace. He's 8 months. He's an old English bulldog Trifon. He's like a lilac undertone. And he's teaching me a lot about patience and compassion, because if you discipline a dog, 5 minutes later, that dog will come back and he doesn't even remember that it happened. Or that's what we think. I think he knows exactly that it happened and he wants to love you anyway.
I think that's...
Yeah. So I think that he's teaching me about like, damn, suppose I could be like that. I used to spend a lot of time holding shit. This hurt me really bad. I'm still upset. I'm going to hold this. And my pet is teaching me like, why am I still holding this? I could be mad and I can be hurt, but it doesn't benefit me to continue to hold this. So yeah, that's bringing me joy. Just like actually paying attention to animals more. What else has been bringing me joy? Yeah, I've been cooking a lot more. Yeah, cooking a lot more and like actually just being more intentional with how I spend my time.
You'll have to tell us a recipe too, something that you cooked that was good that we can add up on the
Hey, I
podcast.
cooked this weekend for my partner. He got back from Nigeria. He stayed a week later than I did, and I made a good Scotch bonnet based oxtail, some macaroni and cheese, and some jerk cabbage. Tomorrow I'm making ackee and saltfish and festival with like some plantain. So yeah, I've just been cooking, and I've been cooking like our foods, like Jamaican foods. It really helps me.
I wish you could add an extra plate at the table. That sounds so good.
Well, we all been saying we're supposed to hang out, so I need to make y'all a good Jamaican meal and then invite y'all.
That sounds so good. And the oxtail, I'm there. Oh my gosh, I'm there. And the last question: what is one thing you are excited for the rest of 2022?
Oh man. We're in my favorite season, which is fall. I absolutely love fall for the fashions, number one. But it's also like not too hot and it's not too cold. So I love watching the seasons change. Because as I've paid attention over the last couple years, like my life also changes with the seasons. Like this is largely my harvesting time. And I felt like a little bit like disappointed. Like, how come like I was a lot busier this last year and I had this project? And I'm like, oh, that's because I actually spent my time differently and I made different choices. So I'm really excited about what 2022 is going to bring and continue to teach me. Because sometimes I think I'm so smart and then I forget all the things I spent my time doing. And then like my therapist will remind me, Ifá will remind me. So I'm just really looking forward to like seeing how the year ends and just being intentional and not getting wrapped up into just everything. Because I'm a person that like will get a call like, you should get on this project. And I'm like, oh, this sounds so good. Let me do it. And I'm like, no, actually, I've just been saying a whole lot. No, a whole lot more no's. So I'm looking forward to ending 22, continuing to say no, unless it makes sense and it's in alignment. And yeah, I'm looking forward to 2023 and just doing more things that I care about, saying no a whole lot more, and really giving enthusiastic yeses to things that I just absolutely can't live without. I'm really looking forward to like being in that season of my life. Like if it's a yes, it's because I'm deeply committed and it feels good and I want to see it through. And if it's a no, I'm clear about it. No shame.
I love that. Saying more no so you get an enthusiastic yes. I love that. That's a nice way to frame it. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I am humbled by this conversation with you today. I'm just personally thankful and just glad that we are in a spirit together. Just thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today on the call and your truths with us today. It's just greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Lae'l.
I don't know if you had some last words you want to give to Trinice, but I'm thrilled. I'm just thankful. Place of great gratitude.
Thank you so much. I'm just so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm like, I don't know if this is what this episode was intended for. So I hope that
it's exactly how it was supposed to be. It's exactly how it was supposed to be.
Hope they get what they need. Keondra, your office background is like very nice. Like I'm trying to come over there. I just want to say
thank you.
It's like a TV show back there. I'm like, is that a set? Wow. Nice.
Thank you so much. And that will end today's episode. Cannot wait to drop this one, y'all. Peace out.
Bye-bye.